The reading of my father's will felt more like a coronation than a funeral. My siblings sat in their expensive suits and designer dresses, practically glowing with anticipation as our family lawyer, Mr. Davidson, prepared to distribute the fortune of tech mogul James Morgan. I'm Marie Morgan, though my family barely acknowledges the connection these days. While my brother Thomas runs our father's company and my sister Catherine manages the family's considerable real estate holdings, I chose a different path. I became a mechanical engineer, more interested in building things than managing wealth. To my son Thomas, Mr. Davidson read from behind his mahogany desk. I leave controlling interest in Morgan Technologies, valued at approximately $145 million. Thomas smirked, adjusting his Italian silk tie. To my daughter Catherine, I leave the Morgan real estate portfolio, including all residential and commercial properties, valued at $98 million. Catherine dabbed at non-existent tears with a monogrammed handkerchief. And to my daughter Marie, Mr. Davidson paused, frowning slightly at the paper. I leave the old Morgan manufacturing facility on Industrial Drive, including all contents and associated documentation. The room erupted in poorly concealed laughter. The old factory had been abandoned for 20 years, a relic from when Morgan Technologies actually manufactured things instead of just designing them. How appropriate, Thomas sneered. The family failure gets the family junk keep. Catherine's lips curled into a pitying smile. Maybe you can turn it into one of those trendy art spaces, Marie. You always did like getting your hands dirty. I sat quietly, remembering the last conversation I'd had with Dad before his sudden heart attack. He'd been unusually serious, asking about my latest engineering projects, my thoughts on manufacturing automation. The old ways aren't always obsolete, Marie, he'd said cryptically. Sometimes they just need the right person to understand their value. Mr. Davidson handed me a heavy brass key and a thick envelope. Your father left specific instructions that this was to be opened only after you took possession of the factory. I ignored my siblings' continuing snickers and studied the key. Despite the factory being abandoned for 2 decades, the key looked recently cut. That evening, I drove to Industrial Drive. The old Morgan manufacturing building loomed against the sunset, its red brick walls still solid despite years of neglect. The surrounding industrial park had modernized, but this building remained stubbornly unchanged. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, emergency lights hummed to life, revealing a vast space filled with sheet-covered machinery. The air smelled of machine oil and possibilities. My footsteps echoed as I walked through the main floor. Under each dust cover, I found pristine manufacturing equipment, not the outdated machines I expected, but carefully preserved precision tools that would have been cutting edge when the factory closed. But it was the basement that changed everything. The stairs creaked as I descended, my phone's flashlight illuminating decades of shadows. The basement had been Dad's private workshop, where he developed his first patents. No one had been allowed down here, not even Thomas. Banks of computers lined one wall, their screens dark but their power indicators blinking steadily. A massive safe dominated the far corner. And everywhere, there were blueprints and notebooks, meticulously organized and preserved. With trembling hands, I opened Dad's envelope. Inside was a letter and a set of passwords. My dearest Marie, if you're reading this, you've already discovered that the factory isn't quite the worthless inheritance your siblings believe it to be. Everything here has been maintained in secret, waiting for someone who understands what I was trying to build. 20 years ago, I developed a manufacturing process that would have revolutionized the electronics industry. But I also saw how wealth and power had changed our family, how success had turned innovation into mere profit-seeking. I couldn't let this technology become just another way to make money. It needed someone who understood the engineering, who cared about building things that mattered. It needed you. In the safe, you'll find my original patents and prototypes. The computers contain 20 years of research and refinements. The machines upstairs aren't obsolete, they're custom-built for a manufacturing process decades ahead of its time. But be careful. There are people who have suspected what I was developing here. They've been watching, waiting for any sign that the technology still exists. Use the passwords. Study everything. When you understand what I built, you'll know what to do with it. All my love. Dad, P.S. The mechanical calibration sequence is in Protocol 7. You always did have a talent for precision adjustments. I lowered the letter, my mind racing. Dad hadn't abandoned manufacturing, he'd been perfecting it in secret, waiting for the right moment, the right person. The first password revealed schematics unlike anything I'd seen before. The process Dad had developed didn't just streamline electronics manufacturing, it fundamentally transformed it. Components that currently required massive factories and environmental compromises could be produced in a fraction of the space with minimal waste. If this worked, it would revolutionize not just electronics manufacturing, but the entire approach to technology production. A noise upstairs made me freeze. Footsteps moved across the main floor, too deliberate to be random vandals. I quickly powered down the computers and gathered the most crucial documents. Dad's warning about people watching suddenly felt very real. As I slipped out the back entrance, I saw 3 men in dark suits entering through the front, their flashlight beams sweeping the machinery floor. Dad had been right, people were watching, and now they knew the factory wasn't as abandoned as it seemed. Back in my apartment, I spread out the documents I managed to grab. The technical specifications were brilliant in their elegance. Dad hadn't just developed a new manufacturing process, he created an entirely new paradigm for production. But he'd also left me with a puzzle. The patents and prototypes in the safe, the carefully maintained machines, the decades of research, they were pieces of something larger. Something that could either transform the industry or be weaponized by those who only saw its profit potential. My phone buzzed, Thomas calling, probably to gloat more about his inheritance. I ignored it, focusing instead on Dad's notebooks. The margins were filled with annotations, references to other documents still in the factory. I needed to get back there, but those men? Who were they? Corporate spies? Government agents? Competitors who'd suspected Dad's secret research? A text message lit up my screen, an unknown number. The Morgan manufacturing facility is more valuable than you know. We should talk. I turned off my phone. Dad had spent 20 years protecting this technology, waiting for someone who would understand its true worth. I wasn't about to let it fall into the wrong hands now. But first, I needed to understand exactly what he'd built, and why he kept it hidden for so long. The next few days were a blur of research and revelation. Each document I grabbed from the factory led to new insights, new possibilities. Dad's process wasn't just more efficient, it was revolutionary in its approach to materials manipulation at the molecular level. Current manufacturing methods were like trying to paint a masterpiece with a roller brush. Dad's process was like having a precision laser, exact, controlled, perfect down to the smallest detail. But it was also dangerous in the wrong hands. The same precision that made it perfect for electronics manufacturing could be used for less ethical purposes. Dad had understood this, which explained his secrecy. A week after the will reading, Thomas invited me to dinner, a first in years. I knew it wasn't brotherly concern that prompted the invitation. That factory, he said, swirling his $100 wine, it's actually quite valuable property. The land alone. I'm prepared to make you a very generous offer. I sipped my water, thinking of the hidden computers, the secret research. Not interested. His practiced smile slipped slightly. Don't be difficult, Marie. You're an engineer, not a business person. You can't possibly think you can do anything with that old building. Maybe, I said carefully, I understand its value better than you think. His eyes narrowed. Have you been in the basement? The question was too sharp, too specific. Thomas knew something. The basement's flooded. I lied smoothly. Has been for years. He relaxed slightly, but I'd seen it, the flash of recognition, the hint of knowledge. My brother wasn't just being greedy. He knew, or at least suspected, what Dad had hidden in that factory. Which meant I wasn't the only one who'd been left a secret inheritance. Dad had given Thomas the company, but he'd given me the key to its future. Now I just had to figure out how to protect it. I knew I had to get back into the factory, but this time I needed a plan. Thomas's suspicious questions about the basement confirmed my fears. There were multiple parties interested in Dad's secret technology. Late that night, I returned to Industrial Drive with my old engineering colleague, Dr. Sarah Chen. She'd specialized in molecular manufacturing during her PhD, and I trusted her completely. This is incredible, Sarah whispered as we examined Dad's schematics in my makeshift home office. The precision control at the molecular level. This isn't just ahead of its time, it's practically science fiction. But it works. I said, pulling out the prototype specs I'd grabbed during my first visit. Dad wasn't theorizing. He built it, tested it, perfected it over 20 years. We spent hours analyzing the technical documents. Dad's process used a combination of quantum tunneling and precision magnetic fields to manipulate matter at the molecular level. It could restructure materials with perfect accuracy, creating components that were currently impossible to manufacture. Marie, Sarah said finally, do you realize what this could do for medical technology? For environmental restoration? This isn't just about making better phones or computers. A noise outside my apartment made us both freeze. Footsteps in the hallway, too heavy to be my neighbors. Back door, I whispered, grabbing the most crucial documents. We slipped out just as I heard someone picking my front lock. They're following you, Sarah said as we drove through the city. What did your father tell you about who might be interested in this technology? Just that people were watching, I replied. But after dinner with Thomas, I think it's more complicated. He knows something about the basement. We headed to Sarah's university lab. If we were going to protect Dad's legacy, we needed to understand exactly what he built and why he kept it hidden for so long. The next morning, I received 2 more messages. The first was from Catherine. Thomas told me about your dinner. Don't be stupid, Marie. Sell the factory before you get hurt. The second was from that same unknown number. Final warning. The technology doesn't belong to you. Make the smart choice. I turned off my phone and focused on Dad's notebooks. The margins were filled with more than just technical notes. There were warnings, coded messages, and most importantly, a name. Dr. Marcus Wong. Found him, Sarah said, looking up from her computer. He was your father's research partner 30 years ago. They had a falling out just before your father started Morgan Technologies. A quick search revealed that Dr. Wong now ran a tech consulting firm that worked extensively with Morgan Technologies, my brother's company. That's how Thomas knows, I realized. Wong must have told him about the research. But there was something else in Dad's notes, references to ethical constraints and safeguards. He hadn't just developed the technology, he'd built in limitations to prevent its misuse. We needed to get back into that factory basement. This time, we went in prepared. Sarah set up surveillance cameras around the perimeter while I worked on bypassing the building's ancient security system. We entered through a maintenance tunnel Dad had marked in his blueprints. The basement computers were exactly as I'd left them. While Sarah kept watch, I began systematically downloading decades of research data. That's when we heard voices upstairs. Check everything, a man ordered. Wong says the prototype has to be here somewhere. I recognized Thomas's voice responding, the basement. It has to be in the basement. Sarah gestured urgently at the emergency exit. But I hesitated. There was one last file downloading, something labeled Protocol 0. Footsteps on the basement stairs. The file finished transferring just as the door burst open. Thomas entered first, followed by Dr. Wong and 2 security guards. Hello, little sister, Thomas smiled coldly. Finding anything interesting? Actually, yes. I stepped away from the computers. I found out why Dad never trusted you with this technology. Wong moved forward, his eyes fixed on the computers. The prototype. Where is it? You mean this? I held up a small device, seemingly simple, but containing Dad's most critical designs. 20 years of research of perfecting something that could change everything, and you just want to exploit it. Don't be naive, Thomas snapped. That technology is worth billions. It belongs to Morgan Technologies. No, I said firmly. Dad left it to me because he knew I'd understand what he really built. Wong lunged for the device, but I was ready. I pressed a sequence of buttons, the calibration sequence Dad had referenced in his letter. Every computer in the basement activated simultaneously, running Protocol 0, Dad's final safeguard. What did you do? Wong demanded as the screens flickered with cascading code. I smiled. Dad didn't just build a revolutionary manufacturing process, he built in protection against exactly this scenario. The computers finished their sequence. Every file, every schematic, every piece of research was now encrypted with quantum keys that would take centuries to break. The technology isn't lost, I explained. It's protected. It can only be used the way Dad intended, to help people, not just generate profits. Thomas's face contorted with rage. You think this changes anything? I own Morgan Technologies. I have the resources to what? I cut him off. To steal something you don't understand. Check your phone, Thomas. He pulled out his phone, face paling as he read the breaking news. Morgan Technologies stock was plummeting. Anonymous sources had revealed evidence of corporate espionage, of secret deals with Wang's firm to steal proprietary technology. Those surveillance cameras Sarah set up. They've been broadcasting for the last hour. Quite a show. Security guards rushed in, but not Thomas's. These were federal agents who had been watching Wang for months. As Thomas and Wang were led away in handcuffs, Sarah emerged from her hiding spot with a satellite uplink device. Livestream ended. The whole thing's been recorded and backed up to secure servers. The aftermath was explosive. Morgan Technologies' board of directors voted to remove Thomas as CEO. Catherine tried to distance herself from the scandal, but her involvement in the theft attempt came to light. Me? I had work to do. With the factory now secure, I began the real task, understanding and implementing Dad's vision. The manufacturing process wasn't just about making better electronics. It was about fundamentally changing how we interact with the physical world. 6 months later, I stood in the restored factory, watching the first official test of Dad's technology. The machine hummed quietly, its precision fields assembling medical implants with molecular-level accuracy. Each device would help someone walk again, see again, live again. Sarah, now my chief research officer, stood beside me. Your father would be proud. I touched the framed letter hanging on the wall. Dad's final message to me. He knew this would happen. He spent 20 years preparing for someone who would use this technology the right way. The factory now houses the Morgan Institute for Advanced Manufacturing. We don't just make things, we develop new ways to help people. Every innovation is open source, protected by Dad's quantum encryption to ensure it can't be weaponized or exploited. Thomas and Wang went to prison for corporate espionage. Catherine lost control of most of the family properties when her involvement was exposed. The Morgan family fortune largely disappeared. But something better emerged from the ashes. Last week, I received a letter from a young girl who received one of our medical implants. I can walk again, she wrote. Thank you for making this possible. I keep that letter next to Dad's. They remind me that true value isn't measured in dollars or stock prices. It's measured in lives changed in innovations that serve humanity rather than exploit it. The old factory isn't just worth more than gold. It's worth more than all the wealth my siblings fought over. Because inside its walls, we're not just building products. We're building the future Dad always envisioned. A future where technology serves humanity, not the other way around. And that's an inheritance worth protecting. The steady beeping of heart monitors used to drive me crazy. Now it's almost comforting. A reminder that I survived, that I'm still here, despite everything my family did, or rather didn't do. My name is Alexandra Martinez, though these days most people call me Dr. Martinez. I'm a neurosurgeon at Boston Memorial Hospital, specializing in spinal trauma. It's not just my job, it's my calling. One I discovered in the hardest way possible. Dr. Martinez, they need you in trauma too. I glanced up from my paperwork to see Lisa, one of our most experienced nurses, in my doorway. Her expression told me everything I needed to know. Spinal injury, probably severe. What do we have? I asked, already moving. 23-year-old female, car accident, presenting with potential C4-C5 fracture. Parents are in the waiting room. Parents in the waiting room. That detail shouldn't have made my stomach clench, but it did. Memories of my own parents in a different waiting room, 5 years ago, came flooding back. 5 years earlier. What do you mean you can't pay for it? My mother's voice echoed through the hospital room. You have insurance. I tried to explain again, my voice weak from the breathing tube they just removed. The insurance company denied the claim. They're saying the rock climbing accident was high-risk activity, not covered under my basic plan. Well, that's your own fault. Dad burst out. Who goes rock climbing anyway? What were you thinking? What was I thinking? I was thinking that at 28, with a newly minted medical degree and the start of my neurosurgery residency ahead of me, I deserved one last adventure before 6 years of grueling training. I was thinking that I checked all my equipment, followed all safety protocols. I couldn't have known about the faulty anchor bolt that would send me plummeting 30 feet onto the unforgiving granite below. The surgery cost $287,000, I said quietly. Without it, I might never walk again. Never perform surgery. Everything I've worked for. That's more than our house is worth. Mom threw up her hands. We can't help you. We'd already spent everything putting you through medical school. I paid for medical school myself, I reminded her. With scholarships and loans. Loans I'm still paying off. But they weren't listening. They never did when it contradicted their version of reality. The one where they'd sacrificed everything for their children. Where any success we had was because of them, any failure our own fault. What about Michael? I asked, referring to my older brother. He just got that big bonus. Don't you dare ask your brother for money, Mom snapped. He has 3 kids to think about, a mortgage, private school tuition. And I have a spinal cord that's about to be permanently damaged without surgery. The outburst cost me. Pain shot through my broken vertebrae, making me gasp. The monitors started beeping faster. Look what you made her do, Mom hissed at Dad, getting her all worked up. They left soon after, promising to think about it and make some calls. But I saw it in their faces. They weren't going to help. My brother Michael came by the next day, full of apologetic excuses. You know I would if I could, Lex. But with the kids' college funds, the new beach house. I closed my eyes, not wanting him to see the tears. Michael had been my hero growing up. The big brother who taught me to ride a bike, who defended me from bullies. Now he couldn't even look me in the eye as he chose his beach house over my ability to walk. My younger sister Carmen didn't even visit, sent a text saying she was too busy with wedding planning to make the trip from New York, as if her centerpiece choices were more important than her sister's spine. The next few days passed in a blur of pain, fear, and increasingly desperate phone calls. The hospital wanted payment arranged before they'd schedule the surgery. Every hour that passed risked permanent nerve damage. Then Dr. Catherine Chen walked into my room. She was head of neurosurgery, a legend in the field. I'd been accepted into her residency program, supposed to start in 2 months. Now that dream seemed as broken as my spine. I've reviewed your case, Dr. Martinez, she said, pulling up a chair. Her presence filled the room, commanding yet compassionate. Excellent academic record. Outstanding USMLE scores. Multiple publications as a medical student. And now this. I'm sorry, I whispered. I know I'll have to withdraw from the program. Why would you do that? I blinked at her. The surgery. I can't afford it. Without it, I can't. The surgery will happen tomorrow morning, she cut me off. I'll be performing it myself. But? The hospital has a special fund for medical professionals, she explained. Combined with a payment plan you can manage on a resident's salary, will make it work. She leaned forward. I don't give up on talented surgeons, Dr. Martinez, and neither should you. I started crying then, really crying, for the first time since the accident. Not from pain or fear, but from the simple fact that this woman who barely knew me was willing to help when my own family wouldn't. The surgery was successful. Dr. Chen's skill, combined with my youth and determination, meant I was back on my feet within months. My residency was delayed by a year, but I made it through. Every grueling 30-hour shift, every complex procedure, every small victory and devastating loss. It all made me the surgeon I am today. I paid back every cent of that surgery and then some. Set up my own fund for medical professionals in crisis. Became known for taking on charity cases, especially spinal trauma patients who reminded me of myself. My family, they got exactly what they wanted, distance from my problems. I hadn't spoken to any of them since I left the hospital, blocked their numbers, moved across the city, built a new life. Last I heard, Michael's beach house was lovely. Carmen's wedding was featured in some bridal magazine. Mom and Dad took luxury cruises every winter. But life has a way of coming full circle. Dr. Martinez? Lisa's voice pulled me back to the present. The patient. Right. I straightened my white coat. Let's go save another spine. Hours later, after successfully stabilizing my young patient's cervical fracture, I was finally heading home when my office phone rang. Few people had that number, and most of them were in the hospital. Dr. Martinez speaking. Alexandra. The voice was hesitant, familiar in a way that made my blood run cold. It's your mother. I sat down hard. How did you get this number? Your old residency program. I told them it was a family emergency. She paused. It is an emergency, Alexandra. Your father, he had a heart attack. The words hung in the air. 5 years of silence, broken by a medical crisis. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully, but I'm sure the cardiac unit at whatever hospital he's in is perfectly capable. He needs bypass surgery, she interrupted. Complex bypass surgery. Our insurance. There's a problem with the coverage. Her voice cracked. We need your help, Alexandra. Please. I looked at my desk calendar, at the date circled in red. Tomorrow evening was the hospital board meeting where I'd be officially inducted as the youngest board member in Boston Memorial's history. Dr. Chen was retiring, passing the torch of department head to me. Alexandra, are you there? Yes, I said quietly. I'm here. And I was. Just not in the way she expected. The waiting room at Mass General looked exactly like I remembered. Uncomfortable chairs, outdated magazines, that peculiar hospital smell of antiseptic and anxiety. My mother sat alone in the corner, her designer handbag clutched tight against her chest. She aged in 5 years, though her highlighted hair and expensive clothes tried to hide it. She jumped up when she saw me. Alexandra, you came. I stayed just out of hugging range. I'm here as a medical professional, Mom. Nothing more. Her face fell slightly, but she nodded. Of course, your father's in room 412. Walking into Dad's hospital room was surreal. The man who'd always seemed larger than life lay pale and diminished, surrounded by beeping monitors. Various tubes snaked from his body. IV lines, oxygen, cardiac monitoring leads. His eyes widened when he saw me. Lexi? Nobody had called me that in 5 years. I pulled out my phone, opened my medical notes app. I'll need to review your case, Mr. Martinez. When did the symptoms start? The formal tone made him flinch. Good. 3 days ago, he said quietly. Chest pain, shortness of breath. I thought it was just stress. The stress of what? I kept my voice clinical. Managing your rental properties, planning your next cruise. Alexandra, Mom interrupted. Please, the doctors say he needs triple bypass surgery. The insurance company is giving us problems because your father, she hesitated. Because I skipped some premium payments, Dad admitted. Business has been slow, and with the economy. How much is the surgery? $315,000. Mom whispered. We don't have that kind of money. Not anymore. The number hit me like a physical blow. Almost exactly what my spinal surgery had cost. The surgery they'd refused to help with. I see. I made some notes on my phone. And what are your assets? The beach house Michael's always posting photos from. We had to sell it last year, Dad said. The rental market crashed during COVID. We've been living off our savings, but... The cruises? Mom's designer wardrobe? Appearances, Mom admitted. We had to keep up appearances. For the business. I looked at their faces, really looked at them. Saw past the expensive clothes and carefully maintained facades to the fear beneath. The same fear I'd felt lying in my hospital bed 5 years ago. I'll make some calls, I said finally. Wait here. In the hallway, I pulled out my phone again. Not for calls, I already knew what I was going to do. Instead, I looked at photos from 5 years ago. Me in my hospital bed, brave smile hiding my terror. Dr. Chen standing beside me at my residency graduation, both of us beaming. The first spinal surgery I performed independently. I'd made it without them, become someone I was proud to be. The question was, what kind of person did I want to be now? 20 minutes later, I returned to the room. My parents looked up hopefully. I've arranged for your father's transfer to Boston Memorial, I announced. The surgery will be performed by Dr. William Hayes, one of our top cardiothoracic surgeons. But, how can we afford? Mom started. There's a program. I cut her off. For patients experiencing financial hardship, combined with a reasonable payment plan, it should cover everything. Dad's eyes filled with tears. Alexandra, thank you. We don't deserve. You're right, you don't. My voice was steel. But that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing it because 5 years ago, someone showed me what real compassion looks like. What it means to help people not because they deserve it, but because you can. I pulled out some paperwork. However, there are conditions. First, you'll meet with our financial counselor. No more skipping insurance payments, no more living beyond your means. Second, you'll both volunteer in our hospital's family support program. Help other families facing medical crisis. They nodded frantically. And third, I met their eyes. You'll attend a little ceremony tomorrow night, my induction to the hospital board. I think it's time you saw exactly what your daughter has become, without your help. The next evening, I stood at the podium in Boston Memorial's main conference room. The place was packed, hospital staff, board members, donors. My parents sat in the back row, looking uncomfortable in their seats. 5 years ago, I lay in a hospital bed not far from here. A broken spine, no way to pay for surgery, and a family who walked away. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. In the back, my parents shifted uneasily. But one person didn't walk away. Dr. Catherine Chen saw past my broken body to my potential. She didn't just save my spine, she saved my future. Dr. Chen, sitting in the front row, smiled warmly. Today, I'm honored to join this hospital's board. But more than that, I'm honored to continue Dr. Chen's legacy. Our new expanded financial assistance program will help more patients access life-saving care. Our family support services will ensure no one faces a medical crisis alone. I paused, looking directly at my parents. Because that's what this hospital taught me, that true healing isn't just about fixing bodies. It's about helping people when they're at their most vulnerable. About showing compassion not because people deserve it, but because it's the right thing to do. After the ceremony, my parents approached hesitantly. Mom was crying. We were wrong, she said simply. So wrong. About everything. Yes, you were. I handed them a tissue. Dad's surgery is scheduled for next week. Dr. Hayes is excellent. You're in good hands. Alexandra, Dad spoke up. Could we, maybe, have dinner sometime? After I recover, try to? Start over? I finished. No, we can't start over. Too much has happened. Their faces fell, but I continued. But maybe we can start something new, something better. Dad's surgery was successful. During his recovery, my parents threw themselves into the volunteer program. Mom turned out to have a gift for comforting worried families. Dad used his business experience to help patients navigate insurance paperwork. Slowly, carefully, we rebuilt our relationship. Not the old one based on obligation and appearances, but something new founded on mutual respect and understanding. Michael called when he heard about Dad's surgery, wanted to reconnect. I told him I was busy, had a spine to fix. Carmen sent a wedding anniversary invitation. I sent back a donation to the hospital's patient care fund in her name. Some bridges stay burned. Some heal stronger than before. The trick is knowing which is which. Last week, a young resident came to my office. She'd been injured in a skiing accident, needed surgery, couldn't afford it. As I looked at her scared face, I saw myself 5 years ago, and I knew exactly what to do. Let me tell you about a special program we have. I began reaching for the paperwork, and about how sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us exactly where we need to be. The heart monitors still beep in the hospital corridors, but now they sound different to me. They sound like second chances, like karma, like healing, not just bodies, but souls. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better. About becoming someone who can break the cycle of hurt. Someone who can turn pain into purpose. That's what I learned from my broken spine, from Dr. Chen, from every patient I've helped since. And maybe, just maybe, that's what my parents are finally learning too. The other day, I overheard Mom talking to a worried family in the waiting room. Their daughter needed surgery they couldn't afford. Mom held their hands, tears in her eyes. Let me tell you about my daughter, she said, and about how this hospital saved not just her spine, but our souls. I walked away quietly, smiling. Some lessons come late, but they come. Some healing takes time, but it happens. And sometimes, the longest journey isn't from broken to healed, but from lost to found. I found myself in this hospital, found my purpose, my strength, my truth. Now, every time I walk these halls in my white coat, every time I fix another broken spine or help another desperate family, I remember what Dr. Chen taught me, that true healing is about more than medicine. It's about courage, compassion, and sometimes forgiveness. Not because people deserve it, but because that's who we choose to be. That's who I choose to be. Dr. Alexandra Martinez, neurosurgeon, healer, daughter. Not broken, but rebuilt. Not bitter, but better. And every day, getting stronger.